I remember a nice conversation I had with François Michelin. François Michelin was doing 45 years, he was the CEO of the Michelin Group. He's the one who brought his company to the number one in the tire industry in the world. He was used to tell me this very, very nice things, which is, we have to make money. If not, we have to get out of business. But the aim of business is not to make money. It's personal and organizational greatness.
Hey everyone. We recently hosted an interview with Alex Savard, speaker, author, and creator of the Virtuous Leadership System. We've benefited massively from his work and are strong advocates for him. If you're interested in learning about virtuous leadership, what your temperament is and what virtue challenges you, how to discover your mission, or want to achieve personal growth, go to alexsavard.com to see his online courses, tests, and books. We hope you enjoy this episode. There's been a lot of stuff happening so far this year, like a lot of headlines and things changing, and I think it's a difficult world to navigate for anybody who's thinking, where do I put investments? What do I, even for people who are trying to find work locally and regionally, like a lot of young people are having difficulty with that. And so I thought it would be like a topical discussion to kind of go over, well, what is the virtue of fortitude?
Fear is a particularly insidious vice in the investment process and leads to many negative outcomes, or prevents you from taking many prudent actions that you could have done. Usually it's the risk that you are least comfortable with that is the more prudent risk to take. So I think we ought to think about fortitude relative to risks. And the misconception is that volatility is risk. But in the words of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, the real risk is the possibility of permanent loss. But volatility is a sort of like a fact of life. It's like living in the ocean and being worried about the waves. Like if you're not comfortable with that, you got to get out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Right?
Welcome to the Ord Life Podcast. Recently, I got into squash.
Actually?
Yeah.
Okay. You're not just
Yeah,
making it up for
No.
banter?
No.
What's the difference between squash and racquetball?
I could not tell you. I haven't gotten into racquetball. I've gotten into squash.
Okay.
Okay. In all fairness,
Do you know the difference between squash? Okay, I don't know.
in all fairness, I've gotten into it in like the last 2 weeks.
And what of all the racket sports, why squash?
Okay, so it's funny because my friend Ben, he one time was like we were hanging out at like a sports rec center, and like we were playing basketball and like just kind of hanging out there. Went for a workout, and he's like, "You want to play squash?" I'm like, "Sure, I've never played it before." And he explained the rules, and it's fun because you can just like kill the ball as like hard as you want. There's more strategy, and it helps to have strategy. But when you're starting out, you can just kill this thing because it's a squishy ball and like the racket's there. You're all enclosed, and it's fun. And so there's a couple of times we'd play stuff, and I enjoyed playing it. And this like over the course of a couple of years, and then we went to play hockey at that same facility a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, oh, like I wonder if we could play squash beforehand. And I'm like, hey, can we play squash before? And he's like, no, I won't be there until 8 o'clock when we're starting hockey. And I'm like, dang, I kind of miss squash. So I talked to Kai, my fiance. I'm like, you want to play squash? She's like, well, how do you play squash? And I'm like, all right, let's do this. So got the rackets. Like they were on a crazy discount at Sport Chat because they had a sale and they had a clearance. So, like, yeah, got a very good deal. They're both like half off. And I'm like, sweet. Got squash balls, started playing. So I played 2 weeks ago, and then I played this most recent weekend with some friends, one from Slaughter and then his friend from high school. And it's enjoyable. I like it. It's a fun indoor sport. It's like high intensity.
Can you play doubles, or is it?
You can play doubles, I think.
Pretty
Don't quote me. Actually, I know nothing about the sport. I don't know why I chimed in.
No, it's just fun. And I think I realize that
play triples, quadruples, whatever you want.
You're like full 11 on 11 in there. Yeah, no, but it's fun. I think I'm noticing that I really enjoy playing sports because like most of my fitness over the past 4 years in university has just been like.
Well, it was a big shift for you because you played football competitively.
Well, yeah, it was
and then university.
nothing. Yeah, well, and even at that during COVID, we didn't have high school sports. Because just for whatever reason, like the high schools weren't doing stuff community was, so I was kind of tempted to like do hockey and stuff like that. But
that's when pickleball arose.
Oh yeah, sport. Yeah. And
That's
golf.
when Mordor took over.
Golf got huge too over
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I think popularity has waned since then.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
It's become
the-
a lot easier to book stuff.
Yeah. There's a night and day difference between just exercising for exercising and playing sports.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And I think now that I have like a little more time, like since university, and like also just more willingness to like see people for the fun of it. Yeah, sports are such
Yeah,
a
like
fun way.
it's a good excuse to get together.
Yeah,
It's fun. Like if you have a healthy sense of competition. So so Ambrose, he's gonna listen to this one day and be like, "Why are you? How could you say this?" But at the moment, in this snapshot in time, he does not have a healthy sense of competition. He's very talented. Like he's athletic and he's good at sports.
He is very good at sports.
He cannot handle losing
Mhm.
very well.
He's a good competitor then.
Yeah, so I have to shape him too. Like it's the fun is just to compete, whether you win or lose. Like that's the enjoyment.
to be tested, I think is fun.
Yeah, like it's the journey, it's
Mhm.
the destination, it's what you do along the way.
it's interesting. As I've gotten older, I've appreciated playing against somebody who I lose to a lot more than I appreciate playing someone who I win against. I'm not going to say who I was able to beat a number of times the recent time that I played squash, but I liked playing squash a lot more against. I like playing when either it's very close or I'm losing.
Yeah, when it's challenged. It's a challenge, yeah.
Yeah, I hate winning because it's like I'm not getting better. It's like I want to like fight for a win. I'd rather win 1 in 5 than win 5 and lose 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the value of that one win is so
because you have
great.
to work so much harder for it. Yeah, and you like developed so much. Like you're for like how do I like keep the cardio, get your positioning in whatever sport it is, and yeah.
Actually, our latest thing is card games. So Ambrose and I are playing crib.
Okay.
We stopped playing chess because I kept
Don't you
winning, and
play
now we
that when
can't
you're
play
65?
chess. Crib?
That was a joke. It's commonly played amongst the
It's for
older
all
generation.
ages, AJ. Don't discriminate.
Don't be ageist.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I've never played.
You never played crib?
No. I've seen the crib board. It looks like these little pegs or something like that. But I don't know how it all works.
Yeah, but I have to let Ambrose win at least every 1 in 3. Otherwise, he will lose motivation.
Okay, have you heard of this? I think Jordan Peterson was saying that when they did like experiments on rats, in order to like continue competitive play, like the bigger rat would have to let the little rat win like 1 in 3 times or something.
But that was the number?
I think that was the ratio.
Okay.
Like
The social
this-
structure amongst
well,
rats.
Yeah, or either amongst rats, like in some sort of competition. If like the dominant player wants to be able to keep on playing, they have to let the non-dominant player be able to win a certain ratio of times.
Because
And I
they'll
think
probably
that
want to
ratio
quit
is-
and not play
Exactly,
anymore.
because it gets demeaning. And and apparently that number is like 1 in 3 is what I've heard.
Okay. there you
Someone else can write into our email podcast at Sodium Capital. Say if I'm totally wrong. I'd invite it. We need more audience engagement, but
Speaking of sports, I love sports too. So I'm coaching my daughter's basketball
Yeah,
team. We finished first in our division.
nicely done.
So playoff week is next week, and then hopefully we have a championship Richmond Oval run
Fun.
for CISFA. So it'll be fun next week. I'll be occupied.
You just
Tomorrow.
dropped an acronym that nobody will know what it means.
I don't even know what Catholic Independent School thing.
Yeah.
Vancouver,
Something
yeah.
like that. Vancouver.
The Vancouver Archdiocese, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded, for someone who didn't realize that was an acronym, it came across like you had a little mini stroke in the middle of your sentence. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this comes to what we're talking about today.
Okay.
Does it?
The rat losing motivation to play.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see.
Because it's out of
All right. Yeah.
fear
yeah,
of
okay.
losing.
This is good. This is good.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? You've been crushed, and the prospect of being beaten again, and the fear of being beaten again. It could be other things, but
Yeah.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to
no,
tie
I
it in.
like
So
it. I
I
like
think
it.
fear works.
This is good.
Keeps you out of the competition. It keeps you from being engaged. So we're talking about fear today, and specifically as it pertains to investing in capital markets and the equity market and that kind of thing. I'll let Anthony kick us off.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff happening so far this year, like a lot of headlines and things changing. And I think it's a difficult world to navigate for anybody who's thinking, where do I put investments? What do I, even for people who are trying to find work locally and regionally, like a lot of young people are having difficulty with that. And so I thought it would be like a topical discussion to kind of go over, well, what is the virtue of fortitude. We've talked about this before, and this actually came out excited. I just wanted to like get more things out about our podcast so people could listen to stuff. And like I saw that it was in order for me to talk about our old Fortitude podcast, and I figured, well, it might be more topical for us to revisit this again. So yeah, kind of going over what fortitude is, how it helps us overcome fear, what different fears we can have, where that can come from, and why fortitude is such a necessary virtue in times of uncertainty and times of feeling like you're defeated.
So the risk of completely repeating myself from the first Fortitude podcast, because I have no memory of what we talked about. Fear is a particularly insidious vice in the investment process and leads to many negative outcomes or prevents you from taking many prudent actions that you could have done. And there's this odd relationship, and it is absolutely counterintuitive in the investment world, that very often the risk, as you become more comfortable with a certain risk, that's usually the more dangerous that actual action becomes.
It's like complacency with a given risk that is a legitimate risk.
It's not even complacency. It's comfortability. Because as you become more comfortable, and let's say it's, you're investing in a company and you think, oh, there's this business risk, but my estimation is that business risk is really low. So I'm really comfortable making this investment.
Because you underestimate the risk that still exists.
And it's not even underestimating. It's the fact that if you are very comfortable with it, that's a reflection of you reading the news and you taking in information. And if you're comfortable with it, everybody's probably comfortable with it.
Okay, there's like an availability bias, or like what's the different? What's the bias where it's like you hop on something like every bit of information?
Availability heuristic is that you put more importance on the information that you can bring to mind easiest.
Yeah,
but it's different. No, this is herding.
Yeah, okay, herding. Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like availability and herding.
Yeah. And it's an unconscious herding. You don't realize, right? You think you make your decision in isolation. But your own comfortability is a reflection of how this information is being presented to you in the news or financial media or whatever it is. It's the same information that everybody is taking in. And so unconsciously, everybody feels very similar to you. And as people herd around some risk everyone is comfortable with, that's reflected in the price. That means you're most likely paying too much. People are likely underpricing this risk. And that even if it's a low risk, you're likely not being compensated for it with a risk premium. And a perfect example is what happened in the last month. Let's take Microsoft, right? The world runs on Microsoft Office. They're invested in OpenAI. They have all these opportunities for growth. And then what's happened this month? Out of nowhere, the company's down 20, 30% or something. Don't quote me. I don't know where it is today. But people have difficulty imagining these very negative outcomes when and this now is the availability heuristic, when you can only think of positives about something. And that means people will flock to it. Mm-hmm. And pile in more, usually at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
So where does courage come in? Because it's the opposite risk. Usually it's the risk that you are least comfortable with that is the more prudent risk to take. Because the opposite happens, right? Everybody can see some sort of business risk or economic risk to a particular industry or company, and they are likely underpricing a positive outcome. And so for you to take the other side of that, when everybody's hurting in the opposite direction, is generally, not always, but has this strong tendency of that is usually the more prudent risk to take. And so this is where Fortitude is such a foundational investment thing, because you're dealing with the future, you're dealing with uncertainty, you're dealing with your emotions and trying to think about the future and trying to make an unbiased estimation of risks and probabilities. And the more uncomfortable you are with something, it is generally speaking the more prudent risk to take on.
Would that be from a retail investor's perspective, or is that?
It affects
more of an-
everyone.
Yeah.
It affects absolutely everyone.
Yeah.
I think the institutional and professional investors are even more susceptible to that risk.
Yeah.
A retail investor, someone who's managing their own account, does not face quarterly reviews on their performance,
Yeah.
whereas the fund manager, the institutional manager, does.
Yeah.
And so that fund manager, that professional investor, is more constrained in their ability to take that courageous step into thinking different, to looking different. Because another fear that goes along with that is most or a lot of professional investors are not motivated on maximizing returns necessarily. That's everyone. There's an underlying motivation there for everyone for a given amount of risk to have the most possible return. But there's also the opposite motivation, which is to minimize the underperformance relative to a benchmark. Minimize the risk of going out on a limb and making a mistake, because that usually means you're fired. And when professionals are being reevaluated every 3 months on your rolling 3-month return relative to some benchmark, the risk of, if there's an asymmetric risk. If I go on a limb and I'm right, you probably don't get a lot more investors attracted to you, but if you go on a limb and you're wrong, you're probably fired.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it sounds like from what you're describing, there's more motivation to kind of stay within the general peer group as opposed to step outside of that.
Yeah, which is the cowardly decision, right? It's the fear of losing my job. It's the fear of making a mistake. It's the fear. It's doing something you inherently think is imprudent or less prudent because of these fears, right? And so professional and institutional managers are far more susceptible to that than retail investors, because someone who's managing their own account has only themselves to answer to. So bringing it back to more of the idea of volatility.
Yeah.
You're talking about recent volatility in the market and the necessity for courage and fortitude. So I think we ought to think about fortitude relative to risks. And the misconception is that volatility is risk. That's how it's defined by regulators. That's how we define it to investors when we think about risk and how much risk a person can bear, is how volatile a portfolio can you have. But in the words of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, the real risk is the possibility of permanent loss. Right? And that's finding a company that deteriorates and never recovers, like the business, or goes bankrupt, or has, is outcompeted and can never recover market share and those kind of things. Like, those are real risks. Those are pertinent risks. But volatility is sort of like a fact of life. It's like living in the ocean and being worried about the waves. Like, if you're not comfortable with that, you got to get out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Right? It's unavoidable. And the person who's exhibiting fortitude in a volatile environment ought more to think about volatility from the opposite side. Instead of thinking about, this is going lower, how much lower could it go, to see it from the point of view of, this is an opportunity for the courageous person to act when people are moving in the opposite direction.
What about the person who holds on to a stock and just goes down 90%? Because like what in there, what virtue are they lacking to tell themselves that I'm holding on and it's going to work out? Because I've seen it happen before. Yeah.
So it depends. It depends on the circumstances. If something is falling 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%, and there's no underlying change with the business, you either have to accept that you paid too much up front and this is now the new valuation, or you have to reevaluate your view of the business. And so there are times when a company that is fine, doing fine, has no deterioration of fundamentals. I mean, I can't say I've ever seen a company that had no deterioration of the fundamentals go down 90%.
Yeah.
or that you had no margin of safety with at the beginning go down 90% from your purchase price. But the key virtue there is humility.
Yeah.
Is to reevaluate the circumstance with fresh eyes, forgetting what you initially thought about it, forgetting your own experience of the price declining, right? Because then we are beholden to this thing, get even-itis. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
I'll get rid of it when it gets back to
when it
my
gets back to
original
even.
value that I
Yeah.
purchased it at.
Yeah.
But
And
then
that's
but
fear. That's
pride.
fear of loss.
That's
No,
pride now.
that's fear of loss.
Yeah,
Because
that's
you
okay.
haven't
Loss
made the
aversion.
loss until you sold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you
say, I hate this
loss
thing.
aversion bias is huge.
Yeah, I hate this thing. I can't wait to get out, but I can't sell it now because I'll sell it at a loss. That's fear.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think like I had a bit of that when I first opened an account with you, and I think what was it? Because I'd been told about like a lithium stock from a friend, and I was like, oh, like I'll jump into this, and I bought it at like what ended up being its peak. So on a given day, I bought it, sort of thing, and then it was down, I don't know, 40%. And you kind of said, well, like, what do you think about it? And I'm like, well, I don't know that much about it. I just trust like my friend, and it's like not a significant amount of money. And you're like, all right, well, I think for that level of risk, there's many other stocks that have much better upside potential. And I'm like, interesting. Because I was thinking, like, hold on to it, sell it when it gets back there. But your mentality and approach was much more, well, if you're willing to take that much risk, it's much better to get out of that and then to go into something that has more upside potential as opposed to something that just has a get back to your point, like get even potential.
Yeah, and that's the humility of saying, look, I made a mistake. I'm just going to get out now.
Yeah.
I will take the loss. Usually it's better to take it's always better to take a smaller loss than a larger loss, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
to make a change early. And that's, so the governing virtue is always prudence.
Yeah.
Right? Reevaluating this thing with fresh eyes, reanalyzing your own thoughts, taking fresh eyes to the same problem, which is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to drop this baggage that you bring to this problem, unless you're phlegmatic, and then it's easy. So it's hard, and to do that unbiased and without the influence of all these like heuristics and mental tendencies and emotions that are clouding your judgment. But let's say you can do that. You've made this prudent decision, which you can only get to through humility, and you can only execute it with fortitude. Because the fear of saying, like, look, as soon as I sell it, this thing's going to come back, even though you know the prudent thing to do, but this fear of things changing right after, like, that will inhibit you from doing it. The fear of taking loss, like that you've actually crystallized this loss now, that you actually have to admit to yourself you were absolutely wrong, and there's a red number on this return. But usually the prudent thing is, you should probably make a change. Now, there are times when there's just noise, when things move for no actual reason, right? Just changes in sentiment and money flowing into and out of markets and speculators coming in and out. And when you can reasonably think to yourself, this is noise, that's where volatility becomes the opportunity. That's where you should look at this and say, this is not the risk. This is my chance. This is my opportunity to take advantage of. Right? But it's very difficult in those moments when you're down 20, 30% or whatever it is to find the fortitude to do that. Because you think it's down 20, it's going to go down 30. Or if it's down 30, it's going to go down 40. And that's where your judgment gets clouded, right? You somewhere in the back of your head, you prudently say to yourself, like, this is a great company. This is a fair price. I should act now. But what's holding you back is your fear of being wrong, that you acted too early. Or your fear of loss that will continue to go down. When you needed the courage to just act in that moment and say to yourself, I'm going to trust my judgment. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I kind of got off on a tangent and lost my own train of thought.
No, I think that's all well said. I mean, when things are there's a lot of negative sentiment, for you to compartmentalize that and just look at a company objectively, say, hey, where does this company stand now? What are the good reasons to own it? Is it a good value? Despite the fears out there, again, to your point, is like to exercise courage. Is like, no, like all the reasons seem to point towards that this is a good decision And so to take action, the importance of the good reason and the action coming together is important in demonstrating fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's two other aspects that I would bring up right now, which is the fear of looking different. And it's different than the market. So generally the approach is someone's building a portfolio. They say, I would like to be compared to the United States market. So I'm going to look at the S&P 500 and my portfolio is probably going to look a lot like that. Because there's a comfort in this, right? That this is what many people are invested in, something similar. Therefore, I'll do something also similar. And it's the herding bias.
Yeah.
But the fear comes from the unwillingness to step out and do something that is dramatically different. Because if you think everybody's doing it, then how can I really be wrong? Or if I'm wrong, then we're all going to be wrong together, right?
Mm.
And so it really takes fortitude to think differently, to approach the problem differently, in a novel way, in a different way, in a way that other people are not. And then the other thing is the fear of concentration. Like that you own a portfolio. Well, let me phrase it this way. That there is a certain comfort in owning, let's say, 1,000 companies. Or the S&P 500, and owning 500 companies, right? Like, if I'm wrong, it doesn't really hurt me anywhere. But if you're right, I know those really particular companies, it doesn't really help you that much either, right? So you kind of you resign yourself to just be very average. And that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with average. But if you're doing it, it depends on why you're doing it. If you, out of your prudent analysis, have decided that, look, this company, great things are going on with it, and the price is low, it's not reflected in this at all. Like, a prudent thing to do is to allocate more of your portfolio to this opportunity. So it's not 0.001 or, some small fraction. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 2%, right? There's prudent diversification, so you're still bound by that. But 3% is a totally reasonable weight. But there's the tendency out of fear to say, to sort of hide behind this large number of securities. Because the fear of being wrong, the fear of going out on a limb and making a mistake. When odds are, if you've really approached the problem prudently and you know what you're doing, you know how to analyze these things, the prudent thing is to probably own more of that opportunity. And you can only get there through fortitude.
I'm thinking of the parallel that we made to sports earlier in our conversation. I liken just participating in like the S&P 500. It's kind of like, hey, I'm participating. I'm getting the participation ribbon of sports. As opposed to, hey, I'm playing this sport to win or to lose, and those are the natural outcomes, but the importance to be willing to win.
Well, so I think the implication there is that you're like going to take some action that gives you a higher return, which can be true, but the opposite is also true. So there could be risks that you have analyzed and think are more pertinent than the market is assigning to that risk in that moment. And let's say you think that risk is to technology. And you look at the composition of the index and you realize it's 50% technology. The motivation to fear is the fear of looking different. Is the fear of saying, like, I think this is a big risk, but I'm going to have to I'm going to look so radically different than the index, I'm not going to do that. Where in your own prudent analysis, you've determined, like, this is not a risk I think I should take prudently at this, market price or whatever. So it's also about having the courage to address or make changes to address certain risks that you've decided are a higher probability than the average person thinks. And there it's not about, trying to earn the gold medal. It's about, I was just watching the Olympics this morning. It's about not crashing during your short track speed skating course. Because if you crash, then you're out, right? Big part of investing is just surviving to another day. But that's, even though like thinking about risk, you would think fear would motivate you to address a risk. The fear of looking different can often be an even more powerful motivator, so that you don't address it. You don't do anything about it.
Yeah, I think in the context of sports, like I'm thinking of a coach that I had in football, and he said, if you want to make a mistake, do it at like 1,000 kilometers an hour, because at least we know that you're committed to making that mistake. And we had another coach who was like, he'd be a little more hard on us, and like some of the guys would be afraid of him, and they'd be more afraid of messing up. So Sean, to your point, like looking the exact same, like they just end up looking the exact same as everyone else because they didn't want to mess up. Like they didn't want to like shoot a gap, or they didn't want to like run at like as hard as they could, and they'd end up just kind of being very average. Like they'd be there, they'd be a body, they wouldn't be doing
taking
anything.
up space.
They'd be taking up space, which like they're supposed to do, right? But they're not actually contributing that much. And at least if they do something blatantly wrong, then you can say, hey, that was wrong. Love that you did it with that much intent, but it was wrong. And so I think even to sports, like you think of the absolute greats who are in any given field, they're pulling off plays that no one would think possible.
It's the ultimate level of commitment.
Exactly, because it's like I'm going to do this. I don't care like if it goes wrong. But well, why do they have that capacity and that confidence? Because they've been doing that. Because it's not an ability; it's a mentality. They've taken that thing, and they've said, "Yeah, I'm going to try and for Connor McDavid, skate and handle in this way, and do that for Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to throw with my left hand while I'm like 2 inches off the ground, like."
But also with like that elite level of athletes, they know their abilities quite well.
Yeah,
and it's their keen sense of recognizing inefficiency in that play or in that movement amongst their opponents, that they see an opportunity there.
Yeah, and then they become acclimatized to that because they're not doing things out of fear. They're doing things fundamentally out of well, you'd say magnanimity, humility, recognizing their ability, and then fortitude to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to stick with it. Yeah. And then after the game as well, it's like you're going to mess up, you're going to have lost the puck, you're going to whatever. But then it's like Gretzky, right? Like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which is super cliche, but I think relevant in this context because it is, you can be average and you can just kind of pass off the responsibility to somebody else, or you can take action and deal with the responsibilities, but then you also get the benefit to learn and to understand and to grow from whatever that mistake could have been.
And I think it's a beautiful tie-in with the investment world where humility and fortitude work together.
Yeah.
Like they work hand in hand. Because when you can say to yourself from the outset, like, I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to have losses, there is going to be volatility. Like I know these things to be true, that when it happens, you're so much more prepared to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, just to have the fortitude in hand in that moment, because you're not expecting perfection. You're not expecting that everything will go right all the time, or that every decision you make has to be sold at a gain or whatever it is, right? Because often the best decision means taking the loss and moving on, or acting when there's volatility, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Much else to add?
I think that was a good close.
I'm out.
Yeah. I think I love these types of discussions because, and you brought this up when we were talking with Havard, that good investor behavior is simply virtuous behavior. And so many of the points that we made was this, like, we're acting from fear. If you're an athlete, you don't want to mess up, or as an investor, like, you don't want to lose, you don't look different, sort of things. Like when you start from a place of fear, you're in the wrong space. Like you're not going to do well. And it's fundamentally that virtue that enables you to say, no, I'm, in Havard's words, like, created for greatness, right? I'm not created to mess up. Right? I'm created for something good. So there's, instead of a risk of not doing well, the equally great risk is to not fulfill your greatness, I guess, I suppose.
Yeah. I actually have one last point, which is that, and this is like true of fortitude in general, right? But in our context, for someone who's managing their own money and they're faced with these pushes and pulls from fear and pride, and they're making decisions, those things affect everyone at every level, right? And it's where fortitude comes in is when you feel the temptation to fear, and you feel the fear, or you feel the pain of facing your own, like selling something at a loss, everyone will feel that pain at the idea, or feel the fear of volatility, or whatever it is. It's the fortitude that pushes you through it, right? That despite this feeling, you do it anyway, because this is the prudent thing to do. And so I want to make sure that people know that, like, that never goes away, even in the investment world.
Yeah. Brilliant. Much else to add?
I was thinking of, like, given that you brought up the analogy of athletics and whatnot, I think the importance of coaches, good coaches along the way too.
Yeah, that is true.
Like, we're talking about the action of the individual athlete or the individual investor, but the importance of having good coaches, so that sometimes when you think, I think I can do it, but also having the perspective from the coach that's outside of that circumstance to say, like, no, you've done it before.
Yeah,
we recognize different circumstances. It gives you that element of the additional level of confidence so that you can act courageously.
Yeah. And even just like the idea of like a coach being a leader, like this is somebody who's going to achieve his own personal greatness by bringing out the greatness in you, and who's going to put you in a place to be successful. I think we talked about this before. Like, as you get older in a given sport and as you get more developed in a given sport, it no longer has as much to do with the ability of a given athlete, and it has much more to do with the ability of all of the athletes to buy into whatever system is in place. And I think the same thing for investors. Like, you can do very well, like gambling on a couple small stocks here and there and see great results of your portfolio, but at some point you do have to buy into a given system that you're going to trust yourself with. And I think, like, you need the virtues in order to create that system and to see it through in its proper way. Otherwise, you're going to end up.
Well, what you're talking about is courage without fortitude.
Yeah.
Right. Now you're sorry. It's the same thing. Courage without prudence.
Yeah.
Right. Now you're taking, like, long shot, probably bad ideas, and
Yeah.
just because you have the courage to take them doesn't mean make it a good idea.
Yeah. It's the football coach who has, like, a quarterback who can just sling it in a fast receiver, but no other planning, right? And I've seen it more than I'd like to, but yeah. I think with that, like, if you don't have a good system that you trust, you're going to end up going from this, like, natural ability to this either long shot or to this, we're just doing the most basic thing possible, which in the investment world I think is, just like, there's the index, just going on the index. Instead of saying, well, is this actually the best thing to do? Do we have a good system for building up how we're going to achieve our goals, a team, as an investor, as whatever it is?
That was my final interjection.
That was good. We've had 3 almost ends. This is the final. This is the final, and hopefully this is the official. All right. Thank you for listening. I'm Anthony.
I'm Sean.
I'm AJ.
All right. Have a good day.
This podcast has been prepared by Sean Gregory, who is a portfolio manager, AJ Sanson, and Anthony De Lazari, who are associate investment advisors for IA Private Wealth, Inc. Opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the portfolio manager and investment advisors only, and do not necessarily reflect those of IA Private Wealth, Inc. IA Private Wealth, Inc. is a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund and the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization. IA Private Wealth is a trademark and business name under which IA Private Wealth, Inc. operates.